All right. So we are learning from Srimad Bhagavatam. We completed until chapter 24 last class. Today we start with chapter 25. So anybody remembers what the story, how much the story has unfolded regarding Kardama Muni and Devahuti? Anything you remember? So Kardama Muni meditated on the Lord and followed austerities for 10,000 years. And then when the Lord came, what did he ask the Lord? He said, "Oh Lord, I need a good wife." So was Kardama Muni being materialistic when he asked for a wife? He could have asked for, "Oh God, please take me to your world and I want to be with you." So actually, a devotee always wants to serve the Lord regardless of where he is. And Kardama Muni is a great devotee because he is following the instructions of his father, Brahma. And Brahma was instructed by the Lord to populate the world with enough people. And so Kardama Muni had to have a wife and have a lot of children so that the world will get populated. And so he was trying to serve the Lord and he was praying to the Lord so that he'll get a good wife, so he'll get good children who can fill the world. So what did the Lord say? Anybody remembers? So the Lord came to him and said, "Oh, Kardama Muni, I'm very pleased with your penance and you're going to get a wife soon." Actually, the great king, Swayambhuva Manu, who's a Mahajan, he has a very nice daughter who is very spiritual and very blessed, very saintly. She is the one going to be your wife. You should accept her when they come tomorrow, or as soon as the Lord left. Shatrupa and Swayambhuva Manu came with their daughter and asked for marriage with their daughter with Kardama Muni, right? So then Kardama Muni and Devahuti, they had 9 daughters, and Kardama Muni had agreed on the marriage, stating that when he had kids, he would leave to focus just on the Lord. But then Devahuti said, "I only asked for kids from you, but I wish I could get fearlessness." And Kardama Muni said, "Oh, don't worry, Devahuti. Next, we'll have a male child who is the Lord himself, and he'll give you all the instructions you need." So when Kapila was born and ready, he grew up, and at that time, Kardama Muni left the home and had Devahuti be protected by her son. So we go into chapter 25 where they're discussing, they have a wonderful conversation between themselves, and we are going.
There was one.
Yes, Ishaniji?
There was one person who was crying in lake. The water became full in the lake. Something like that was there, right?
Yes. So actually, when the Lord came, he was so happy with Kardama Muni. Tears from his eyes filled into a pond called Bindu Sarovar. So very nice remembrance. So that is the area where Kardama Muni was practicing his austerities, and that is where Devahuti went into the pond and got transformed into a very beautiful person, because when she was serving her husband, and they were living a very austere life. She got matted hair, she got very emaciated, she was not looking attractive, and she felt she didn't have the health to bear a child. So when she said, ask Kardua Muni, please, can you help me? He said, go take a dip on this pond. And she got all the health, regained her health, and she was looking very beautiful. There were hundreds of maid servants under the water, making her beautiful. And then when she came out, these maid servants also came out and entered into a flying palace where Kartama Muni and Devahuti lived for 100 years. Yes, very good remembrance, Ishaniji. Thank you for that addition. Okay, so which brings us to chapter 25. And so these chapters are filled with questions from a mother to her son. So her mother understands that her son is actually the Lord himself, Kapila Dev. So she's asking all these wonderful questions. So first she asks, oh, please remove all these illusion in my heart. And then Kapila Muni or Kapila Dev actually gives all these explanations and answers all her questions. So in this chapter, there are 7 questions totally asked, out of which the first question is how to dispel all these lack of understanding. Then the second question is how to attain bhakti. Third question is how to get knowledge. Then what is the process of yoga? Then the fifth question was what is the path of bhakti? Then then she asked about Mother Nature. Then what is this continuous life and death of the cycle of life and death? So all these questions were answered by her son so well. So we'll start with the first the verses from the 25th chapter of 3rd canto. So she's asking, please describe who took birth to give Sankhya. So this is Maitreya Rishi and Vidura. So if you remember, we were discussing, so initially you will see the conversation between Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, and within that conversation they're talking about Maitreya Rishi and Vidura meeting and asking questions. And then outside all this is the conversation between Suta Goswami and the rishis of Naimisharanya. They're talking about all these conversations. So sometimes you'll find Maitreya Rishi speaking, sometimes you'd find Suta Goswami speaking, sometimes you'll find Sukadeva Goswami speaking, but all this is conversation within a conversation, but all of them are focused on the topic at hand, that is Devahuti discussing about spiritual topics with her son. So she says, please remove all this illusion that I have. This illusion is the one that causes something called aham mameti. Aham mameti means, it's a Sanskrit word that means I, me, mine, always thinking of what is in it for me. It's being very selfish and thinking about only one's own welfare and self-preservation. That's called aham mameti. So she asks how to dispel this aham mameti, that I'm not just thinking about my bodily welfare, but I'm thinking about the soul and serving others. she asks about the spiritual, um, how to be spiritual, and she's asked about the jiva in material world. And then Kapila Muni talks about Adhyatmika yoga. So Adhyatmika yoga is the spiritual activities by which you can dispel or remove this material conception. And Adhyatmika yoga is of three types. One is bhakti, one is jnana, or sankhya. So Kapila Dev is described as the father of Sankhya philosophy. So he's the one who established Sankhya philosophy. And Sankhya philosophy is the knowledge aspect, like who are we? We are not this body, but we are the soul, and the nature of the soul. All this is explained by Kapila Dev. But um, if we talk about the Adhyatmika yoga or spiritual practices, there are three types. One is bhakti, one is jnana, and one is Ashtanga yoga, or for some people just say yoga in short. So out of these three, bhakti is taught most. And Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita as well. He says of the different processes of liberation, and he mentions that bhakti is the best. But some want to follow the path of knowledge, or they want to follow the path of doing certain activities like yogas, pranayama, and that is what their interest is in. But the Bhakti Yogi is the topmost, and all the other Jnana and Ashtanga Yoga all can come within Bhakti. And Bhakti is understanding Lord as a person and loving the Lord. That is Bhakti. So then Kapila, she asked, like, how do you understand who is a liberated soul? So a liberated soul is not someone who dresses or puts a tilak, or who puts saffron on them, has a big beard and a long hair. So you can't just say that person is a liberated mind or a liberated soul. It's all based on whether that person has conquered lust, anger, greed, pride, and doesn't have any illusion. So those are the symptoms that you can see to understand whether a particular person is liberated or not. So there could be persons who acts as if they are a great devotee, who are bahirmukhi, or just externally they show themselves as great devotees, but their activities are all contrary to a liberated soul. Then you can understand this is not a liberated soul. This is just a bogus person who is just acting. But a real way to understand is whether they have these wonderful Vaishnava qualities. Okay. Um, so perfection of yoga is not possible without bhakti. The Lord himself is saying that bhakti is topmost, and bhakti is the one that completes the process. So, and then she asks, how can one get bhakti? And bhakti cannot be got by just, reading a book or doing an exercise. Bhakti can be got only if you associate with sadhus. So all of us here in this call, we are trying to associate with each other, learn from each other. So this is the process to get bhakti, is what the Lord himself is saying. Kapila Dev is the Lord. So then Devahuti asks, what are the characteristics of sadhu? So what is the behavior or activities? What do they do? So first, Kapila Muni explains about the secondary characteristics. Secondary characteristics are whether one is humble, whether one tolerates any disturbances, all the good qualities. Those are secondary characteristics. The primary characteristic is whether the devotee is fully surrendered to the Lord and is serving Krishna. So fixed devotional service to Krishna is the primary characteristic. So you can see these question and answers, and Mother Devahuti is asking for all of us to understand what bhakti is, what should we do. All that is explained so well by her son Kapila Dev. And Kapila Dev establishes that jnana and yoga are incomplete without bhakti. Okay. So then we start chapter 26. So then we go into the elements. We discussed this in Canto 1 and 2. So we're not going to delve much deeper into this. So Mother Devahuti is asking about the Sankhya philosophy. So what is material nature? How is it formed? How can one transcend the modes of material nature? The modes of material nature are sattva, rajas, tamas, and all these. How can one get away from ignorance, passion, and material goodness, and focus on spiritual goodness? So how to cut the knots of attachment. So first, Kapila Dev explains about the three very important topics: Purusha, Prakriti, and Jiva. So who's Purusha? Purushottam or Purusha? Actually, the Lord is the only enjoyer in this whole creation. Everybody else, all of us are Jivas, and Prakriti is this external energy. So Purusha, Prakriti, and Jiva. So all these different characteristics are explained by Kapila Muni to Devahuti. And then he also explains about, how the different elements were formed. First sound came, and then space or ether, and then from that the subtle, aspect of touch, and from touch came air, and from air came the form aspect, and then fire, then taste, then water, smell, and then the earth. So the all elements were how they were formed are explained again. We already discussed this in the previous cantos. So how the Lord enters into the dormant universe, which is like all the material universe is just external energy, but only when the Lord enters, they start interacting with each other, and only when the soul enters the body becomes a living body. So all that is explained in this chapter. Okay. And then we also discussed about the Virat Rupa, who is the sum total of all the external energy of the Lord, and how the Devatas evoke the Lord to start the activities in this world. And then we go into chapter 27, where it is described about material nature, how the jiva is actually unaffected by the gunas. Guna means the three modes of material nature. So the soul is actually spiritual. So how can we understand the soul being affected by these material aspects? So one of the example given is, it's like a golden ring that falls into a gutter. The golden ring is like the soul that's in a gutter, that's the material world. But the golden ring, just because it fell into the gutter, you don't like throw it away. You just wash it and use it again. You can put, if it's the ring that fell into the gutter, You take it out of the gutter, you wash it well, and then you put it back on your finger. Just because it fell in the gutter, you don't throw it away. So similarly, the soul, because it's come to the material world, it shouldn't, it's not always going to be in a bad situation. If we cleanse the coverings of the soul that is affected by all these dirt, the soul becomes ready to go back home, back to Godhead. And that is the story of all of us. So then Kapila Muni is explaining about yoga and jnana now. So we've discussed the three different types of adhyatmika yoga or spiritual activities is jnana or knowledge, path of knowledge, then Ashtanga yoga, path of following certain exercises and a process, and third and topmost is bhakti. So Kapila Muni is explaining more about jnana and Ashtanga yoga in the next few verses and chapters. So moving on. Okay. So devotee asks, like, it is very difficult to, get out of the clutches of Maya, which is holding us back and making us think that we can be happy by making our body enjoy certain things, but actually no. So Devahuti asked how to get out of this cycle of life and death and all that. So Kapila Muni recommends that one should be intense in their practice. So take it seriously, and then you can come out of the clutches of Maya. So Prakriti cannot harm an enlightened soul, final liberation of the yogi. So if one is very strong in Krishna consciousness, they will not be affected by Maya. Okay. Then we go into the different limbs of Ashtanga yoga. So this is all paths. This is in bhakti also one can do, Surya Namaskar and all that to keep your body in good working condition. You can do exercises, but the topmost is love of God. But Ashtanga yogi, sometimes they just focus on the activities and not think of the Lord as a person. So Ashta Anga means 8 limbs. So the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga are yama and niyama. That means do's and don'ts. What are the rules? What should you follow? Then comes asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So these are the 8 limbs. And then actually Kapila Muni explains about each of these different limbs of Ashtanga yoga. So as we said, yama niyama are the do's and don'ts. Then comes pranayama, which is like inhalation and exhalation and holding your breath. So anything related to breath, that is called pranayama. Now there are many paths today that there is Sri the art of living. Those foundation, they focus on this the breath aspect. But these are, like, as you can see, they are small things that one part of Ashtanga yoga they are following. But then the Lord himself says Ashtanga yoga can be done, but the most important thing is bhakti. So we should all focus on bhakti. And again, to keep our body and purify our body aspects, we can do all this pranayama And so pranayama will destroy all the doshas. Dharana, so dharana will free one from the material modes. Dhyana, one can focus on meditate. Dhyana, that helps. And then finally there is samadhi, which is full surrender to the Lord. And Krishna himself says it's very difficult to follow this process in this Kali Yuga. So the best process is chanting the holy names of the Lord. Okay. And then, even in Ashtanga Yoga, there are some folks who meditate on the form of the Lord. So that's very favorable. So even though they're following Ashtanga Yoga, they'll slowly come to Bhakti. And these next few verses are all describing the wonderful form of the Lord. So as you can see, he's really beautiful. His four-handed form, where he's holding the conch shell, the chakra, the lotus flower. He's holding his gata or the mace. So describing his four-handed form, the folks who meditate can also come to bhakti with the process of dharana. So these beautiful verses describe the whole form of the Lord, and then the full form of the Lord is described in these verses, and meditating on the full form of the Lord, and then each limb of the Lord, his lotus feet, his calves, his thighs, all of this. So when his lotus feet is described, it said how the water emanating from the Lord's feet, the Ganges is flowing, and then it is taken on the head of Lord Shiva, who is a great Vaishnava, and who's taking Mother Ganges on his head just because it is coming from the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And it's all explained really well, and each limb of the body can be meditated on of the Lord, and each of these verses is glorifying his calves, his navel, and nipples, his thighs and hips, his chest and neck. All of these are described so well. His arms, his lotus face, and his smile. So all of these aspects of the Lord can be meditated upon, and it'll really bring Ashtanga yogi from just following a process to the process of bhakti. So there are two ways Ashtanga yogi can go with dhyana. He can become a devotee, or he can go the unfortunate route of not understanding the Lord as a person and developing love in his heart. Because when you meditate on the different forms and the limbs of the Lord, one can easily get bhakti. But if the yogi is just meditating on like light or something like that, they don't get that blessing. So with that, we will conclude today's class, and we can go to the Kahoot quiz. All right. Diana doesn't have the phone. So let's go into the Kahoot quiz. Ayana, you coming back? Ishaniji, would you be able to join the Kahoot?
I've joined.
Oh, you have. Okay, very good. Let me just check on Ayana. For this, you can go directly to sleep. Okay, the pin is 610837. So today Ayana is not feeling very well, but she still decided to do the Kahoot. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you join? Okay, 1 of 8. What is aham mameti? Caused by Maya or illusion, caused by darkness or ignorance, conception of I, me, my, false ego, all of the above. Yes, all of the above. All of you got it right. Great job, Ishani ji and Ayana. Okay. Second question. Devahuti calls her son Kapila her transcendental I, her servant, her money source, all of the above. She calls him the Shastra Chakshu, meaning a transcendental I by which he can understand about the spiritual knowledge. How does Devahuti praise her son Kapila? Only person she can take shelter, Sharanyam, acts that cuts her material existence, best of the knower of bhakti, all of the above. Yes, Sam, it's all of the above. Fourth question. What are the 3 types of Adhyatmika yoga? Yoga concerning the soul. Playing, exercising, studying, singing, dancing, playing musical instruments, Bhakti, Ashtanga Yoga, and Jnana, Sankhya. Very good. All of you got that right. Fifth question. What are the symptoms of a liberated soul? Having a beard, wearing saffron clothes, clear of lust, greed, formed by false ego, all of the above. Yes. That's how we can understand based on what a person's character is, what they do is what makes them a devotee. Okay, how does one get bhakti? By learning by oneself, by exercising, by traveling, by associating with sadhus, devotees. Yes. So all of us are trying to be devotees by associating with each other. Very good. True or false? Yoga and jnana are complete without bhakti. True or false? Yes, yoga and jnana are incomplete without bhakti, because only if bhakti is there, yoga and jnana will help one.
What is jnana?
Jnana is knowledge.
Yeah.
What is the best form of bhakti? Spontaneous, emotional, bhava, or raganuga, all of the above? Yeah, so it is all of the above, because this is the form of bhakti that Krishna likes the most, where you treat him as your little son, or your friend, or or you think of him as your beloved. So all of having those mellows of relationship and emotions is what he likes the most. So that's why Raganuga or Bhava Bhakti is the topmost. And the way to get there is what we are following called Vaidhi Bhakti or Sadhana Bhakti, where we are practicing by chanting the holy names of the Lord so that we can get this emotion towards the Lord, the greatest emotion of love towards the Lord. So thank you very much. Let's see who's on the podium. Third place. Who's on third place? Okay. Second place is Ishani ji. And first place is Ayana. And all of you, both of you are winners because we are here to learn about the Lord, and whoever learns about the Lord are winners. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Dandavata Pranam. Have an amazing Krishna conscious week. Hari Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpada Rupascha Kripa Sindhupe, Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.